Hello, everybody. Welcome into Week 10 lineup advice. Round 2, we're going to try again. We had a false start 10 minutes ago. So thank you, everybody who jumped over to this link to follow us on the stream here for this special Friday evening edition of Start Sit Advice. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined this week, as he has done for all of these London games, mixing around, I guess, Germany game this week, different scheduling time this season. Tom Strachan. Tom, how you doing?
Yeah, doing good, man. Like, just the chat saying week 10 already, the NFL season's flying by, and it is, man. Like, it is real business time. Like, the start sit decisions have never mattered more than we do this week. So just hyped to help everyone out for another fun week.
Yeah, depending on your league settings, 4 or 5 weeks maybe left till the playoffs. So it's definitely crunch time for a lot of folks. I want to say right off the bat, before we jump into anything, if you submitted a super chat in the other stream, I do have a screenshot of those saved. So we are going to answer those questions. You do not need to resubmit a super chat. So we really appreciate the support. Along those lines, we did roll out super chats recently. So just to remind everybody who wasn't aware of that, if you have burning questions, this is your chance to get them answered, to make sure we can address them all. We are only guaranteeing responses to all super chats that come in during the first 10 minutes of the show, plus the handful that we have from the previous stream. I'm guaranteeing we will answer those as well. But for this stream, only ones that came in for the first 10 minutes, we are guaranteed. We're going to get to as many as we can. So please keep sending them in as much as you can throughout the episode. But those are the ones that we can promise we'll get to for sure. And please try to avoid waiver questions, trade questions. This is a start sit live stream, as we are just a couple of days away from folks needing to make these final decisions here for week 10. So if you want us to tackle your questions, start sit questions, send in those super chats early. Tom, I suppose it's for the best that most people couldn't hear the start to the other stream, because it was mostly just you and I gushing about how excited we were about Thursday night football this weekend. What a better mood we're in than we could have been if things went south on that 2-point conversion.
I mean, there was definitely a good half hour when the Ravens were down by 14 points where I was starting, my mood around that part of the game was really starting to sour, but by the end, it was perfect. Great game from both the games where the Ravens and Bengals have played each other this year. Joe Burrow's played excellent, Lamar's played excellent, and it's just really fun to imagine how that's going to play out over the next few years.
I mean, pretty clearly two of the three best quarterbacks this season so far from what we've seen. They've both been really remarkable in different ways. And we talked a little bit before the show. Two of the, five best games of the NFL season so far have been these Ravens-Bengals matchup. I had a tweet last night. I was like, build the whole schedule out of Ravens-Bengals. I mean, it's just super fun to watch these two go head-to-head. And it really never just, unless one of them is injured, I can't remember a time that it really truly was a letdown.
Yeah.
It's almost always a super fun game.
Yeah, and more so for us because the Ravens seem to come out on top most of the time.
Yes, more often than not, we are sitting here pretty happy after those games. Let's dive into, I won't be able to put them on screen because they were from the previous stream, but let's dive into those super chats that we weren't able to get to before we had to cancel the other stream. The first one here is flexing Demarcus Robinson or Goddard or picking up McLeod. And this question comes from Bonnie. Thank you, Bonnie.
I quite like Demarcus Robinson here. The Dolphins, they've been pretty poor against the pass this year. They ranked 27th in DVOA against the pass, so I'd probably lean towards that. But I do quite like Ray McLeod. And if for any reason Drake London sounds like he's going to be severely limited, then I'd pivot to that, and you would know that in advance with Falcons playing Sunday and the Dolphins on Monday.
Yeah, exact same approach for me. I definitely co-sign that approach to all of them. Let's go to this other question. 1993 RMV asks which wide receiver to start. Khalil Shakir. Sorry, part of this is cut off on the screenshot. I believe it's Wan'Dale Robinson or Alec Pierce. For me, that's very easily Shakir. Would you go in a different direction?
No, I'm going Khalil Shakir. Khalil Shakir is my wide receiver 24 this week. Now we've got Keon Coleman ruled out for at least this week, and Amari Cooper playing with the wrist cast, I think, against the Colts, who are pretty poor against the pass. It's an easy one.
Yeah, I totally agree. Super easy one. Definitely going Shakir. And by the way, 1993, if you're listening, and for some reason I'm looking at this screenshot wrong, and I have, because again, this part kind of cut off a little bit, definitely don't hesitate to drop another chat. You don't need to do super chat. We will answer that question if you need to correct us. Question here from King Andrew. Hey, pros, Rams, Jets, or Detroit defense for week 10 and also for rest of season. So Rams, Jets, or Detroit. He mentions he's 5-4. So each point counts for week 10, 11, and 12. He's wondering who has the best schedule as well for the rest of the season. Again, that's Rams, Jets, and Detroit.
I think I'd probably be okay with the Jets because they're getting a lot healthier in the back end. Like their cornerback play and safety play hasn't been as good this year as we'd expect, but they're getting healthier. And I think I'd just lean towards the talent there and the Jets starting to figure things out.
Yeah, looking at some of the schedule stuff too, like Detroit, at Houston, obviously this week, Jacksonville, Indy, Chicago, but then like Green Bay, Buffalo, that's week 14 and 15, Chicago and 16, at San Francisco, week 17. So interesting schedule down the stretch for the Lions. For sure. And then the other question here, and Will actually did submit this again, so we really appreciate the support here, Will. I can throw this one up on the screen. Kyler or Herbert? He also asked a couple other questions, but let's start with the QB one. Kyler or Herbert this week?
Man, like Kyler has been the toughest player for me to rank this year. Every time I drop him outside of the top 12, he seems to do really well. Justin Herbert, I think, is really on the rise. He's looked really good these last few weeks. I've got Herbert QB 13, Kyler Murray QB 14. So it's real coin flip territory.
I have to make this exact decision, not just in any league, but in a guillotine league. So I am like extra nervous about trying to get this one right. As of right now, I have Herbert in the starting lineup. I will probably continue thinking about it throughout the week. Kyler is ranked higher in ECR. Herbert, I believe, is QB 18 last I looked. Yeah, he's still QB 18. Kyler QB 14. Like I said, Herbert's been playing well, and they're actually throwing the ball now, which is appealing, and it's obviously super talented. And I do worry about the matchup. So I it's very slightly into Herbert right now. That is subject to change. Dalton Kincaid or Trey McBride in the same question for Mandwill.
I mean, this is Trey McBride for me easily. I know Trey McBride. I put some out on Twitter earlier today. 44 different tight ends have scored a receiving touchdown this year. Trey McBride hasn't, but he does have a fumble recovery touchdown and a rushing touchdown. Sooner or later, that variance is going to go his way, and he's my tight end 2 this week. Dalton Kincaid last week set career highs in like various stats that he was involved in, like AAR share and stuff, and still only came up with 7 PPR points. I just don't think you're ever going to feel particularly good about starting Dalton Kincaid.
I like Kincaid, but McBride is in a different tier of as long as he's healthy, there's no world where I'm not playing him. Like, I just think he's that good of a tight end. And like you said, I think we're going to see touchdowns coming in the second half of the season. So that would be where I go. And then last one here from Ann Will, George Pickens or Smith. I assume that's Devontae Smith. Who do you prefer of those guys?
So let me just double check this one. I mean, I do quite like George Pickens. He's kind of proven me wrong a little bit this year, but I have Devonta Smith up just outside my top 12 wide receivers. I just think like Nick Sirianni is so petty as a head coach that he isn't going to see a Dallas team without Dak Prescott and be like, oh yeah, we'll just take our foot off the gas. And Devonta Smith consistently over kind of 60 yards most weeks this year, gets in the end zone and you're sitting pretty. Whereas George Pickens, I think he's going to be fine and be a good play this week, but it's just so boom or bust. I always struggle pushing him too high in my rankings.
Smith is wide receiver 16 in ECR for the record. George Pickens, wide receiver 14. So they're both good plays, according to the experts. That's in half PPR scoring. So thank you again for that question, Will. We really appreciate you throwing that our way on both chats. So thank you very much for that. Let's jump into some other questions here. How about Jalen Warren or Jalen McMillan from Jake? Asked the first question.
I think I'm probably leaning towards Jalen McMillan there. It was like really disappointed he didn't play last week, but I still think that if he plays this week, he can have a good game, particularly if he's cycling in and out of the slot like he did 2 weeks ago. The Niners give up a lot of points to the slot receivers. They like to keep the ball in front of them, and that kind of does that at times. So, yeah, I'd be fine McMillan over Warren just because we haven't seen it from Jalen Warren this year, much as that hurts me as he was one of the players I drafted the most of this year.
How about this quarterback question? Drake May or Aaron Rodgers?
And that's a fun one because like Drake May, he's had 3 full games, and in all of them, he's been rushing like to a crazy level. I think he averages 49.6 rushing yards at the minute. And the only guys who average more than him are Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson. So that's where you're kind of at. Of course, he doesn't have the weapons around him to pass to that level. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably just leaning towards Aaron Rodgers because the Cardinals' defense isn't particularly good. They rank 25th against the pass in DVOA. They've given up plenty of points to wide receivers, and it's more just that I have a little more confidence that they're going to get going. Whereas when you look at the Patriots game, that feels like a much lower scoring game. The Bears have been really good against the pass this year. The way to get them is on the ground, like the Cardinals did last week. And as much as Drake May can harm them on the ground, Drake May could still have a really good game rushing and still end up with like 13 points, whereas Aaron Rodgers is probably going to get to like that 17, 18 points.
I had this conversation with Fitz and Debro on our Key Questions show this week. I'm curious your opinion. Are we maybe as an industry, not we as fantasy pros, but just experts in general, are we too slow reacting to the rushing equity you're getting from Drake May? Because like you mentioned, averaging, third most of any quarterback in the NFL, only 3 full starts. So it's a smaller sample size, but you see a guy like that who we know is talented, obviously top 3 pick in the draft. He was, a possible number 1 pick going into his final season at UNC. We know he has rushing equity now. Maybe the talent around him isn't great, but I mean, he's ranked as QB 22. The gap seems too wide for me between a guy like him and Aaron Rodgers this week. Rodgers, I agree with you that I probably would play Rodgers. Rodgers QB 15, Drake May is QB 22. In his 3 completed starts healthy, Drake May has been QB 10, QB 7, and QB 18. So he's been better than this ranking. I know it's Chicago, not the easiest defense, but I guess I'm just wondering, do you think we as an industry are maybe too slow in reacting to the rushing upside that we've really seen from him in every game he's played?
Yeah, absolutely. Because even in the game where he left after 20 snaps, he still had 46 rushing yards and a touchdown.
Exactly.
Like what he's doing is just, he's absolutely balling. And I wrote an article on the site in the offseason looking at like what makes a top fantasy quarterback. And there's basically 2 metrics. If a quarterback hits them consistently in the rushing floor, it really opens it up. And you're looking for 5 rush attempts per game or about 35 rushing yards. As soon as you do that, the hit rate of landing in the top 12 quarterbacks weekly, it skyrockets. And Drake May's doing all that. And as soon as he starts gelling with the wide receivers, I don't know, maybe Jalen Polk could catch a ball one time, then it's really going to open
Don't
things
get greedy.
up for him. Yeah. Crazy things could happen.
All right, question here. Hey, Ryan and Tom. Hey, Easty baby. Juwan Jennings or Amari Cooper? A couple guys with various degrees of, questions around the health for this week. Who do you like better here, Tom?
That's a tricky one because obviously Juwan Jennings has been great at beating zone coverage this season, and we're going to see him go up against the Bucks, who play the most zone coverage across the league. But I think Juwan Jennings, when you've got Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey out there, I've kind of got to just put him below Amari Cooper, even with Amari Cooper dealing with the wrist injury.
I would agree with that. I'm not entirely opposed to playing Jennings this week, but if you have the option of Cooper, obviously assuming health for him, then yeah, I would prefer to start Amari in this one. Let's go to a question here from Turtles B Turton. Great name. Pearsall, McMillan, or Warren in his flex spot?
That one's still going to be McMillan for me. Again, Pearsall, like what he did over the 2 games that he's played was impressive, but he'll struggle for the reasons why I just mentioned that I think Juwan Jennings might struggle this week. And then Warren, like I really expect Warren to kick on down the stretch. Like this is a guy who had the 6th most running back receptions last year. He was the 2nd most explosive running back behind only Devon Achane last year. Like he is what the Steelers will need when things get gritty and their schedule gets tougher. But I kind of just need to see it first.
Yeah. I would agree with you on McMillan again. I'm very happy to go back to that this week. We got a question here from Billy. Down bad at receiver this week. Sorry to hear that, Billy. Gabe Davis, Westbrook-Ikhine, Noah Brown, or Sterling Shepard. Yeah, you are down bad. How can we help out Billy here? Who would you start?
No, this one is Sterling Shepard for me, and it's not even close. Is Gabe Davis healthy? I haven't seen anything about him, but Gabe Davis, so I mentioned it before that the Niners give up production to slot receivers, and I'm going to try and just find this quickly, but Sterling Shepard has a really nice matchup. We know that when he plays, he's going to be in the slot. Last week, he led the Bucs in wide receiver target share with 16%. The Niners allow the 3rd highest yards per route run to the slot, 2.18, 5th most receiving yards per game at 91.1. So maybe Jalen McMillan is eating into those slot snaps a bit, but when Sterling Shepard's out there, he's going to be in the slot. And I just think, given that question, it's probably just Sterling Shepard.
You don't think Westbrook-Ikhine is going to score yet another touchdown this week?
I mean, 5 in a row, it'd be impressive, but betting on that is not something I'm looking to do in my fantasy lineups.
Question here from Skeezy. Sit 1, Trey McBride, Cade Otton, James Conner. A couple of tight ends here, but a couple of highly ranked tight ends, and of course James Conner here. Who are you sitting?
Yeah, I don't enjoy this one at all. Like these are too many nice players. This is a good problem to have. I think it would probably be James Conner. Like he seems to be getting slightly more banged up as the season goes on. We know that he's never played over 13 games in a season. The Jets rank 21st in fantasy points allowed to the running back position. And if Trey Benson starts eating in a little bit more, maybe that's just going to harm Conner's upside. But I mean, like I have Cade Otton and Trey McBride both in my top 5 tight ends this week. And that's the only situation where I tend to choose starting a tight end in the flex if they're that high.
Yeah, I know Pat Fitzmaurice, for example, is pretty adamantly opposed to putting tight ends in the flex spot. But A, we both have already talked about how much we like Trey McBride, and B, just the way Cade Otton has looked. Like
it's
awesome.
crazy, but like 26 targets or something over the last 3 games and just absolutely balling.
We said on the show, like once the receivers went down, Cade Otton is going to be. It's not. Don't go get Trey Palmer. It's going to be Cade Otton is the number 1 target, and that has panned out really remarkably well. I've been talking about Trophy Smack all week. I want to remind everybody that we've partnered with Trophy Smack to give away something truly legendary, a stunning 36-inch gold column fantasy football trophy. This symbol of fantasy football excellence is the golden standard. With its commanding gold columns and inspiring toppers, it's designed to make winning year after year the goal of everyone in your league. To enter, all you need to do is subscribe to the FantasyPros YouTube channel right now, drop a comment below on any of our videos, and that's it. We will be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. That is a very cool prize. I will be jealous of whoever wins that one. Ooh, look what we got here.
I need to upgrade this one, like the black. It's not showing up well enough back there.
Yeah, I need that gold standard. That's very cool. Let's go to this question here from Sink. Hey, we're Mellow Anthony. Great nickname. I love it. Yoti, how you doing? I am doing great because I am talking football here. Who should I start in the flex? Full PPR, 10 team. He's 3-6. Marvin Harrison Jr. or J.K. Dobbins?
And this one's going to be J.K. Dobbins for me. I mean, like J.K.'s not been as efficient as he might have been across the whole season, but Kamani Vidal has done absolutely nothing since that 40-yard touchdown that he started the season with. That one reception was like a 40-yard play. Since then, he's had something like 13 touches for 42 yards. J.K. Dobbins is a top 20 flex play for me. Marvin Harrison is much more down, like the 48 range.
Do you think we're going to see Marvin Harrison Jr. turn it around for fantasy managers and at least become more consistent in the second half of the season?
Yeah, I do think so. And I think that like it's been really a shame to see, but possibly the hype just got a little too carried away, and we're all guilty of doing this, like calling people can't miss prospects. But like maybe not against the Jets. They've allowed the third fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver position. Sauce Gardner hasn't been particularly great this year. I think he ranks 54th in PFF coverage grade, but I just don't think that it's going to be the kind of week where I could start him over Dobbins' projectable volume against the Tennessee side that might be starting Will Levis and could be really struggling.
We got a question here from Shorty. Opponent had Chase, so he definitely needs
Ooh.
some upside here. Sorry to hear that, man. I feel your pain. Full PPR, start one wide receiver and two flex. CeeDee Lamb, Josh Downs, Chuba Hubbard, and Tyrone Tracy Jr. So essentially, we're getting to just drop one of these guys.
So I'm definitely starting CeeDee Lamb. I'm definitely starting Josh Downs. He's got a really good matchup, and now that Michael Pittman's out, that one just makes it even easier. I think I lean towards Tyrone Tracy here, but it's really close between Tracy and Chuba for me. I'll just check where I've got them in rankings. Both like the Giants allow 5.4 yards per carry. Chuba's been playing excellently, but Tracy just seems to be separating away from Devin Singletary. And yeah, I've got Tracy RB14 and Chuba RB19.
I like Tracy better as well. I'm with you on Lamb and Downs. And then Tracy for me, I would pick over Chuba. I just can't get away from the matchup going up against Carolina. Like I'm going to attack that as much as I can. And Tracy has looked very, very good. So to me, and there's like just enough of a question. I know they just signed an extension, but like, you know, if Jonathan Brooks is back, you know, like just enough of a question of what this is going to look like. Enough that if I have a really strong option like Tyrone Tracy, not that I dislike Hubbard, but if I have a strong option like Tracy, that's where I would be going. And I think Tracy gives you that upside that can hopefully, maybe, possibly compete with Jamar Chase's performance. So again, best of luck there. We got a question here. Half PPR, two wide receiver, one flex, another one with CeeDee Lamb, Drake London, Nico Collins, Juwan Jennings, Tony Pollard, Rico Dowdle. So we need two receivers and one flex from that group.
I mean, if Nico Collins is out there, then obviously this is difficult because that's a Sunday night game.
Yeah.
So Lamb and London are the locks for me. I know we're both dealing with different health bits, but both seem to be trending positively. And then I would really like to start Nico Collins. Outside of him, I think it's possibly going to be Dowdle. I think, you know, the Eagles, they don't give up a lot of running back fantasy points, but Dowdle should see enough volume this week and enough dump offs that it should be okay.
What do you make of Pollard going up against that Chargers defense?
Yeah, I don't feel fantastic about it. The Chargers, they rank 14th on run defense. It's easier to run on them than it is to pass on them. They're the fifth best pass defense, but they just don't give up a lot of points. They control the game. You know, we know this story from Greg Roman, like that the offense can control the time of clock and control the time of possession. And it just seems like teams aren't managing to really put their foot down on them. And then once you get up by a score, you're really chasing it because you know you're not going to have too many possessions. So I don't love playing anybody against the Chargers at the minute.
Yeah. I'm really impressed with that defense. Honestly, there was like a fun anecdote. I don't know if you heard this as a Ravens guy too, but that like when John Harbaugh went to Jim to get a new defensive coordinator, and he was like, you can have one of Mike McDonald or Jesse Minter, but not both. Ravens went with McDonald. Obviously worked out really well enough that he's now a head coach. But the more I watch the Chargers defense, the more I feel like there was no wrong answer there because Jesse Minter, really good. I think he's very impressive as a defensive coordinator, and I think he will be a head coach one day. All right, we got another question here from 1993. I think we did get the earlier question correct according to him. So I'm glad that was I had it right. I didn't want to mess that up. Which two running backs to start? Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones.
I think you're locking in Saquon Barkley. He's my RB1 this week. Dallas obviously giving up plenty of running back fantasy points, and yeah, maybe they struggle in this game and it's easy. But Saquon, and then it kind of comes down to Jonathan Taylor. The Bills have given up plenty of running back fantasy points in selective games this year. Obviously, Derrick Henry mauled them, but I'd probably just lean towards Aaron Jones now that Trevor Lawrence is out, or probably going to be out for the Jags. I think that game, the air is going to get taken out of it. Mac Jones is going to struggle to move the ball, and because of that, Aaron Jones is going to see some really good production. I know he hasn't got into the end zone over the last 2 weeks, and he's finished as RB 26 in consecutive weeks because of it. But I think that here he gets in at least once.
Yeah, to me, the only conversation is Taylor versus Jones. There is no world where he's healthy that you're sitting Saquon. I mean, Saquon and Derrick Henry are like 1A and 1B for just like couldn't be more obviously like at the top every single week. So, yeah, definitely Saquon. And then between Taylor and Jones, and Tom says Jones. Let's go to a question here from Pedro. The Giants or the Chiefs defense? We'll get to that question first.
I think I'm going to have to go with the Chiefs. It just feels like Bo Nix unraveled a little bit last week, and the way that the Chiefs play, they play a lot of single high coverage. That's something that Bo Nix has really struggled against. So I'd go with the Chiefs there. But I don't think the Giants are a bad play. They're still a top 10 team for me this week. And then going to the flex question, it's Drake London for me. Like, Drake London was one of my biggest conviction stands this offseason. I think he's been fantastic. Obviously hurt teams when he left last week, but he still managed to get into the end zone.
I'm with you on both of these. The Chiefs and Giants are both top 6 options in ECR. So as you kind of alluded to, they're both quality options, but I think the Chiefs, we talked about this in the Friday show as well. I think the Chiefs are probably the best defensive football, and they're going up against a rookie quarterback who has been good. He's been better than I expected, Bo Nix, but he is still a rookie. He is still a flawed prospect. He's still going up against Steve Spagnuolo and this defense. So I would definitely err on the side of the Chiefs as well. We are in lockstep on that one. Question here from Logan. Traded Amari, Sutton, and Otten to get Puka and Dell. Non-PPR. Is it a good or a bad trade?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Tank Dell's been a little bit up and down, not quite as consistent as last year, but Puka Nacua is the one player who I really want there, and I would give up that combination to make sure that I was getting Puka and the depth after him no matter what.
I'm assuming that Logan has another tight end that is a capable starter.
Yeah,
because Otten has looked that amazing. But assuming that's the case, and also, Mike Evans will come back and maybe things change for Otten at that point. But yeah, I mean, I'm Puka is the best player in this deal, and I almost always want to get the best player in this deal. And I think Dell will have a better second half than he had a first half. So I'm totally on board with that trade as well. Logan, another question here from Turtles. Love it. Weekly quarterback, Kyler or Goff? He does have McBride and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So thinking about the stackability there.
I think that this one's going to be Kyler for me, but I've got them QB 14 and QB 15. It's really close. I'm just kind of leaning towards Kyler's rushing floor. And Jared Goff's been so efficient this year. I wrote about it in my weekly risky starts and sits column on the site, but like the Lions, they just don't have to pass as much this year. Like last year, they ranked 16th against the pass, and Jared Goff was passing for 30 or more attempts in 81% of his games. This year, he's only passed for 30 plus attempts once, and that's because the Lions pass defense ranks third best in DVOA. Like, it's just really hard for me to imagine a world where Jared Goff is putting up the same kind of passing numbers that Kyler Murray can put up with his legs some weeks.
You guys have probably heard us mention this tool before, but I want to remind everybody about our Are They Playing tool. If you're wondering if your injured players are suiting up, check out Are They Playing. It uses AI and years of injury data to give you an accurate prediction on whether an injured player will play. Sync your league and get a simple report for all your players on the practice report throughout the week. Best of all, it's available to everyone for free. So stop sweating the Sunday inactives and get ahead of those tough lineup decisions by visiting fantasypros.com/are they playing. That is a very fun new tool we have been talking about a lot because it's super helpful. Let's go to a question here from Ghost the Jedi. Great name. Wan'Dale Robinson, Amari Cooper, or Mike Williams? Who do you like here, Tom?
I've got to go with Mike Williams. Amari Cooper there. Like, the talent gap between him is just substantial to the other guys. I think Wan'Dale Robinson's contributions lately haven't been as good. But one area that the Panthers are kind of okay against has been the slot. They haven't given up much production to the slot. So yeah, I'd take him out of it. Mike Williams in his first week with the team. I'm sure the connection will get there because Russell Wilson loves taking those deep shots, but I'd be much happier starting Amari Cooper unless we hear any kind of reports that suggest otherwise.
I was a little confused when you very matter-of-factly started off with, yeah, this one's easy. It's Mike Williams. I was like, oh, really? I was not expecting that to be your answer. I would go with Amari Cooper. And I was comforted to hear that you actually do agree with me.
Yep.
That one threw me off. Let's get to some more questions here. From Crystal, full PPR, Cook or Swift?
This one, it's like DeAndre Swift was somebody I took quite a strong stance against this offseason, and he's kind of started off and I was feeling very pleased with it, but it's kind of gotten worse and worse for me. But yeah, I'm still James Cook. I think with the Colts struggling as they are, I think that James Cook sees enough positive game script that he's going to keep seeing the touches. I know people like Ray Davis, and I like Ray Davis, but James Cook still looks excellent and has been really good in real NFL terms. It just hasn't always translated for fantasy, and I'd lean to him.
Yeah, the last 5 games, I think it's a couple of top 5 finishes and then a couple of outside the top 24 finishes. There hasn't been a lot of in between. With Cook, it averages out to something like a high-end RB2. But I actually like Cook a lot this week. I think he's going to have a big game. And the Bears, if you have to start a Bear, it's DeAndre Swift, but man, are the vibes bad right now with the whole team. And I know that DJ Moore doesn't necessarily affect what we expect out of DeAndre Swift, but the body language is bad with him. It's been a weird up and down season for Caleb. If I have a good option, which I think James Cook definitely is, I just don't want to be involved with DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
Another question here. PPR, Tajay Spears or Jalen Warren?
I'm going Jalen Warren there. I know Tajay Spears is supposed to be healthy and should be playing, but we kind of already talked about that matchup and how I don't really want to start many people against the Chargers. Jalen Warren, look, if the Commanders go in and put the Steelers in negative game script, then I think Jalen Warren is going to get going.
Yeah, you've talked a bit about, or even earlier in this show about how you do kind of expect bigger things for Warren as we move further into the season. Obviously, now Pollard is going to play in regards to the Spears side. Another question here. Let's go to pick 2, Puka, Samuel, or Collins.
I think it's going to, Deebo Samuel's historically crushed against zone. The Bucs play the most zone coverage. Puka, as long as he stays on the field and doesn't punch anyone, that's a guy who's a lock for a decent target share. So yeah, I'm very much those two over the question mark of Nico Collins there.
Question here from John. He's got a tough question. Mostert, Irving, Odunze, Leggett, or Hunter Henry?
Part of me quite likes Mostert because the Rams have been quite poor, but I don't know whether I could bring myself to do that. Do you have a particular lean here? Because Odunze feels like he's on the edge of a breakout every week, but the Patriots perhaps not the team where you really want to bank on it. Leggett feels fine. There's nothing really which stood out when I was combing through the matchup data this week where I was like, I have to start Xavier Leggett this week. The Giants have allowed the 15th most fantasy points to wide receivers. They rank 31st in DVOA against wide receiver ones, but it's not anything which you can go, this is a smash spot for Leggett. So if I was really struggling, I'd probably just lean to Hunter Henry, who might just be the best player within their scheme. But
I know it goes kind of counter to what I just said about the Bears being a team to avoid. Given the other options, almost like a system play for me is just I like talented, first round rookie receivers in the second halves of seasons. And he, obviously coming off a 100-yard game, like you said, kind of on the cusp of a true breakout, it feels like. So even though this wouldn't necessarily be the matchup I would, put my money on that is going to be the true breakout, I just pure talent and where he is in his rookie season and what we've seen lately, I'd probably go Odunze myself. I wouldn't call it a strong lean, just a lean of some sorts, I guess. Like I said, not the strongest one here. Like John said, it was a tough question. We got a question here from Jonathan. Full point PPR. Hurts, Tracy Dobbins, Adams, Smitty, Kelsey. Do I flex Jennings, Jameson Williams, or Calvin Ridley with Levis back?
People are not excited about Will Levis being back. I think I'm going Jameson Williams here. Like, we saw how rough it was for Calvin Ridley when Will Levis was out there. And now, again, we keep talking about the Chargers defense, but we really respect their pass defense. So, yeah, I'm going Jameson Williams because I think this Texans defense is starting to struggle.
I am among the fantasy managers for Calvin Ridley who is worried about Will Levis being back. So I am in that chorus of everyone for sure. Question here from Nick: start the Giants or Eagles defense?
Man, I mean, if I could start both of them, I'd be happy enough with that. But I'd be going with the Eagles. I'm starting the Eagles in my home league this week.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking too about the defense, how like the Giants, we kind of keep going other directions with it. They're not a bad play, to reemphasize that, but the Eagles, I think, are the more correct play, considering the quarterback position that they're going up against. Question here from Tyler. As news, I believe this is on Austin Siebert for the Commanders kicker. I have not seen any update personally. I believe he's just listed as questionable for the contest officially. I don't have a lean on if he's going to play or not. Do you have anything, Tom, that you've seen maybe a little different?
All I've seen was like just that he was limited. He's questionable for the game. He was DMP on Thursday, upgraded to limited today. So that makes it slightly more positive. The Commanders haven't brought anyone up from the practice squad. So they haven't signed anyone to the practice squad. So you'd imagine that they probably would have wanted to by now if they thought he couldn't go. Normally you want to give a new kicker at least a day or two to get used to the way that things are running. So I think you should be all right. And I believe he's ranked number 1 in our consensus rankings among kickers with this game against the Steelers.
Ooh, is he? I can't remember the last time I looked at our ECR for kickers, but let's go to another one here. Appreciate all the help from Shashank. Sorry, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Full PPR. Who should I pick for my wide receiver too? Odunze, we just talked about, Jalen McMillan, McLeod, or Pearsall?
I think this comes down to the first two for me. I know Ray McLeod's had some nice weeks, but it's been quite unpredictable, and it really peaked at week 1, and it's not really been as good since. So I think I'm going towards Rome Odunze. We keep saying he's definitely not necessarily predictable. The Bears aren't somebody that you want to predict a lot on, but I've got him about 10 spots ahead of Jalen McMillan.
Question here from Ant: Hawkinson or Ingram?
How do you feel about Evan Ingram in general? I feel like he's probably one of the
Man.
tight ends who I just don't enjoy.
I
dealing
very
with.
rarely have him on teams. He's not a tight end that I am a huge fan of. And obviously with Trevor Lawrence not playing, like I never know what to do with a guy like Evan Ingram when there's a backup quarterback. Because on the one hand, you think backup quarterback, you think, Mac Jones, you think going to throw a lot to a guy like a tight end who's a target hog anyway. So maybe the volume's there. But I kind of agree with what you said of like, he's just not a guy I enjoy that much or typically I'm a big believer in.
Yeah, I'm exactly that. And like last week kind of summed it up for me. He had 5 catches for 45 yards on 10 targets. And Evan Ingram just like he needs that volume. He never really maximizes what he gets. And so if he's not getting into the end zone, you're really struggling. So you're really banking on Mac Jones. The Vikings have allowed 3 top 12 tight end performances, including tight end 1 overall to Tucker Kraft and George Kittle. But they're the only tight ends who've scored touchdowns against them. So I don't think it's any kind of gimme that Evan Ingram can find his way into the end zone, even with the wide receivers banged up there. I've got Hawkinson and Ingram back to back. I think that the volume is going to be difficult for TJ Hawkinson this week. So if you're in full PPR, maybe lean Evan Ingram just because he likely does see better passing volume.
Another question here from Turtles. Every time I see the Turtles, I just want to talk about my beloved Maryland Terrapins. Go Terps. I have no idea if that's what Turtles is even referencing from him, but we appreciate the support nonetheless. Hopkins, Waddle, or TJ Hawkinson?
It's going to be DeAndre Hopkins for me. I just think now things look like they're starting to click with him and Patrick Mahomes. What was it, 8 for 86 and 2 touchdowns last week? Jalen Waddle, like just so incredibly down bad. And with those guys, I couldn't start TJ Hawkinson over them.
What do you think about Hopkins rest of season? Do you think he will be 80% of what we saw from Rashee Rice, 90%, 60%? Like he seems to be sliding into that role at least.
Yeah, so I guess with Rashi Rice, you were talking about a guy who was probably top 8 of a position, top 10. And I think with DeAndre Hopkins, you're probably talking somebody in that wide receiver 18 to 24 range most weeks. Like Xavier Worthy, they're just getting very little out of him. He looks to be incredibly boom bust, can't deal with press coverage. Last week, I think I took the over on his longest reception at 19 yards. And on that first play of the game, I was just like, oh, here we go, straight money straight away. And of course, it didn't come down, and then he ends up with 0 catches. Like, so they need DeAndre Hopkins to be a volume hog. We know Travis Kelce needs to take his foot off the gas sometimes. So I think that DeAndre Hopkins being that kind of possession wide receiver, particularly in PPR formats, is going to pay off top 20 easily the rest of the way. And I'd be happy to go and trade for him.
I pointed this out on a show earlier in the week. Where do you think Xavier Worthy ranked amongst wide receivers last week? He was wide receiver what on the week? Do you know the answer to this?
I'm going to guess like it's got to be. Well, when we put our rankings together on Fantasy Pros, it sort of like defaults to giving us about 100. And I've got to believe it was somewhere around 80 or so.
Xavier Worthy, who, by the way, you and I both outscored last week. He had -1 point, finished wide receiver 156, which I have never seen before. That is the highest number. If you go to the game logs on fantasypros.com for an individual player, the third column is, or I guess it's like the fifth column if you count week and opponent. The third column of stats is finish for the week, and Xavier Worthy finished wide receiver 156.
What do you think the lowest score a wide receiver's ever scored in kind of like, PPR fantasy scores? Like how, like minus, I mean, there's surely got to be some interceptions that they've thrown or something like that. I don't, I'm going to have to try and dive in and find that.
Yeah, like you get a catch and then you fumble and then you get hurt or something and don't come back in the game. Like, I wonder if anybody's like fumbled twice on a couple of end arounds and then left the game.
Yeah.
And so then it's like down to -4 in some leagues. I don't know. I mean, it can't be much worse than -1. Obviously, there's been plenty of zeros over the years, but to be in the negatives as a receiver where you get a point in a lot of leagues just for catching the ball is. And that's look. I'm looking. Obviously, he didn't catch any balls in that game, but that's in half PPR -1. I mean, it's just a remarkably low number.
Yeah, like I'm just looking it up, and last year in 2023, Marvin Mims had the lowest wide receiver score at -1.1. There was a -1, yeah, but no, I want to see like a -4 or something.
Yeah, that would be truly remarkable. I wonder if it would be like one of those weird scoring things, like on as Scott Van Pelt puts it, the pitchy woo woo at the end of a game, like a bunch of laterals, and all of a sudden a guy gets caught with like -8 rushing yards or 80 rushing yards or something like that, like just some weird scoring quirk. That would probably be the way to do it. Which I wouldn't wish on anybody to have that happen to their fantasy wide receiver. Question here from Luca: start Tank or Debo?
This one's Debo for me. I think Debo is one of the kind of plays of the week. I think Tank Dell has been decent. The Lions give up a decent amount of fantasy points to the wide receiver position, but I just think we're going to see a very nice Debo week against the Bucks.
It's the rare evening show, so I had to actually turn on my light here. If anybody noticed that flash of orange, that's what I was doing there. Another question here. We've talked about both these guys, but DeAndre Hopkins or Jalen Waddle?
Yeah, it's Hopkins for me.
Easily Hopkins for me as well. How about Rico Dowdle or Marvin Harrison Jr. in full PPR?
Like I guess this kind of comes down to how you view your team. Like if you are down to like if you let's say not necessarily they played Jamar Chase, but if you played Mark Andrews or even Rashad Bateman, somebody who outproduced what they've typically been doing, then I'd probably go Marvin Harrison. But otherwise, I'd probably go Rico Dowdle for the floor.
This is actually one of the toughest ones we've had because I think you're right, where it probably depends on if you're based on the rest of your lineup or what you've gone up against already. There's an element of like floor versus ceiling here. It's a really poor way to approach start sit decisions. But having said that, I hate the idea of leaving Marvin Harrison Jr. on my bench for like a 180-yard, 2-touchdown game. Like I just know myself, and it would be tough for me to stomach that. Again, that's kind of like a almost like a cowardly way to play, like friendliest loss, as opposed to just going for the win. But I think that would be a tough pill for me to swallow.
Yeah, it's just been really difficult with Marvin Harrison in June in general because I mean, when you draft a guy like he was going first round in some home leagues, he was going second round pretty much everywhere. But these are his wide receiver finishes: 105, 1, 20, 26, 60, 103, 57, 4, 76. Those are like Cole Kmet stat lines and finishes. Like they're just like those are lineup killers when you finish as wide receiver 57, wide receiver 60, wide receiver 103. So I very much think that you have nailed it. Like leaving Marvin Harrison on your bench, that's the kind of thing that you go into the league chat and everybody's mocking you.
Yeah, there's no coming back from that. You're cooked in that league
Yeah,
chat.
yeah, definitely. So I mean, it definitely comes down to how you're feeling about your matchup and the lineup and the place you're sitting within your league at the moment.
Yeah, I think I know where we're going with this one, but start Dowdle or Jawan Jennings.
Yeah, Dowdle. I've got to believe Dowdle's volume's better than the third, fourth option on the Niners this week.
Yeah. I want to take a quick moment to mention our Autopilot tool for everyone. And this is especially helpful when you're talking about a week with the London game. Everybody remembers that early Alvin Kamara surprise inactive. Autopilot helps you out in those situations. It can save you from a surprise zero in your lineup. If you're confused who to start or worried you'll make the wrong choice, let us do the work for you and take the stress out of lineup management with My Playbook's Autopilot tool. Autopilot makes it easy to manage your fantasy team's lineup, get suggested lineup changes via email, have us auto swap inactive players for you, or turn on full autopilot to have your optimal lineup set automatically each week. Use Autopilot at fantasypros.com/myplaybook or on the Fantasy Football My Playbook app for both peace of mind and the best shot at victory each week. That really can save you, especially with these, early games when teams are playing in Europe. And again, you get hit with that surprise inactive and you're toast with that zero. So I'm a huge fan of the Autopilot tool. Let's go to another one here from Christopher. Full PPR, need a flex, TJ Hawkinson or Xavier Legette?
I think I am probably going towards Hawkinson here. I know we talked about how we don't really like the tight ends in those positions, but Xavier Legette, like it's such a wide spectrum of outcomes for him this week that I'd probably just take the 7-8 PPR points from TJ Hawkinson and enjoy it.
About where would you have Hawkinson rest of season amongst tight ends?
So let's see. So obviously, I think if you're going rest of season, you're talking Brock Bowers as your tight end one, and then Travis Kelce not far behind him. Sorry, George Kittle not far behind him. Then you're kind of looking at the likes of Travis Kelce. I think Hawkinson, the problem is we're still projecting so much, and the Vikings have been so good that they're not passing to a huge amount, and it's kind of harming Justin Jefferson as well. So he'd probably be around about tight end 8, tight end 9. I think you'd probably take him over Dalton Kincaid. I'd probably take him ahead of Sam Laporta. Probably definitely ahead of Kyle Pitts. Would you like Cade Otton or TJ Hawkinson the rest of the season?
Man, I mean, if Mike Evans was out for the year, I think I'd probably say Otton. I'm not sure what it's going to look like when Evans comes back. Now, it is a hamstring. Those can sometimes linger. Evans is older. You never know how a guy's going to recover. He's been durable in his career, obviously. As long as he's out, like I like Otton better. And, a couple other weeks of it, I don't know. We're getting close enough to the fantasy playoffs that I am starting to less and less each week say, here's what I think rest of season. And it's more like, what do I think is going to happen the next 2 weeks? And that's kind of how I rank guys, from that perspective.
Yeah, the advantage with Hawkinson that you've got as well is, of course, they're past the bye week, which matters at this point. Like every point of production that you can get week to week is good. And I mean, look, if you got Hawkinson and you can just lock him in as your tight end the rest of the way, you're not going to have to worry about it too much.
Yeah. Otton has his bye next week to that point. Another question here from Ghost. Ricky, Quentin Johnston or Demarcus Robinson? I assume that's Ricky Pearsall.
I think it was Debro pointed out how much of Quentin Johnston's plays, like his productions, come on broken plays this year. So
yes.
It's tricky starting him, and he seems quite touchdown reliant. I think that I'd probably lean towards Demarcus Robinson because when this Rams offense is cooking, going back to like week 12 of last year, Demarcus Robinson's been a really useful wide receiver, and he seems to have that wide receiver free role locked down for them.
Demarcus Robinson feels like I'm kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel of my starting options. Quentin Johnston feels like true desperation. Like there's an extra
Yeah.
level of like, I have no other choice if I'm starting him. So I agree with you. I would go with Robinson out of this group here. How about a question here from Alex? Full PPR needs a flex. Ramondre Stevenson, Tyron Tracy, or Tony Pollard?
Like, I wish I could be saying Ramondre Stevenson because I felt really good about him coming into the year. The Bears are rubbish against the run, but Ramondre's had what 80% of running back rush share over the last 2 weeks, and he's rushed like 30 times for 64 yards. It hasn't been impressive at all. It's Tyron Tracy for me. I just think that he is the more impressive back, and as much as I like Tony Pollard, he seems to be in a very tough matchup, and maybe Tajay Spears eats into his workload a little bit.
It's actually easy for me, and I agree with you. It's Tyrone Tracy for me in that one. Again, the matchup's too enticing. He's looked too good. I'm not getting away from Tracy unless I have a good reason to, and those other names are not good enough reasons to. A question here from Freddie. Kyler, who we've talked about a bit already, or Stafford?
I think we've maybe we don't know. We did Kyler and Justin Herbert. Now this one's Stafford for me. The Dolphins defense, I don't respect it particularly at all. I think with this one, it's in LA, isn't it? Yep. So I just think that the Rams are gonna be rolling, and against Miami's 27th ranked pass defense, I think the Rams can cook them.
So how about then Stafford or Wilson? I assume you'll go with Stafford here, and I would go with Stafford.
Yeah, I mean Russell Wilson, like the debut game was particularly impressive, but like I'm not sure that we're going to see that every week. We had he's been averaging over 270 passing yards, but last week he was the QB 21 with only 13 points against the Giants. Like it's not always going to be pretty for Russ.
How about Terry versus Debo?
Ooh, I like this one. I've got Terry quite high. I think I've got him at wide receiver 12 in my rankings, Debo at wide receiver 16. Are we watch a lot of AFC North football. Do you think that Joey Porter could be a problem for Terry?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see this game because obviously the Commanders' offense has been so historic this year, just in terms of their efficiency and like pretty much every metric you look at, it's been really remarkable. And the Steelers' defense has been really good. Like I do think they're one of the best defenses in football this year. Joey Porter Jr. I think is a very excellent corner. I kind of wanted the Ravens to consider him a year ago.
Yep.
And not that I'm upset with Zay Flowers, but I liked Porter a lot, and I was disappointed to see him go to Pittsburgh. Having said that, Terry has had a pretty good connection with Jay Daniels, obviously, and he's a really good player in his own right. So this is very much a unstoppable force versus an immovable object type of scenario. I wouldn't be surprised if Terry has another similar week of maybe not the most catches, but he does get a touchdown for you. I would probably lean Terry McLaurin over Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I'd say unless and we keep caveating against after last night's game, if you're down and you need to shoot for the moon, I'd probably go for Debo because Debo's ceiling is
It's a
undoubtedly
good
high.
point. I don't typically like doing that if it's like, oh, I went up against like Jamar Chase and he scored 26 points. He had a big day.
Yeah.
No, you don't need to combat when a guy scores 55 points or whatever it is, depending on your league format. And if he also has Lamar or Burrow, that's when you get into, I might actually change my start sit decision strategically to combat that. If it's lower, then I think that can be kind of overblown at times. Not with this Chase game.
If you played up against a team with Lamar and Chase on, you can just take Sunday off.
Yeah, you could go apple picking. You can go, build a snowman if you're living in Denver like me, where it's been snowing for days. You can call your family. You can do anything else other than worry about football. How about Bigsby or ETN? Obviously in the same backfield.
Oh man, like it feels like now that Etienne seems to be healthy, that these two are just going to eat into each other's workload enough that neither of them are going to be particularly fun. I still lean towards Tank Bigsby. I think that the Vikings have given up a fairly high explosive run rate, and Tank Bigsby's been quite explosive, whereas Etienne, that just isn't his game this year. So probably just Etienne by a few spots. Bigsby by a few spots.
How about Montgomery or Collins? This one you actually can wait to find out if Nico's playing because they're in the same game in that Sunday night game. So if Nico's active, who do you like better?
Man, I mean, I love Nico. Like, Nico is excellent. It does sound like he has been genuinely limited in this one. I was hoping he'd come off the practice report a little bit earlier in the week and we'd get a bit more positive stuff from him. But yeah, I've got to believe that Nico can go back out there and instantly slot back in. And Jahmyr Gibbs has been taking work off David Montgomery over the last 5 weeks.
And you would think too that with the state of the AFC South and with how just critical Nico Collins is to the Texans' chances of competing in January. I mean, they have a multi-game lead over the Colts in this division. Nobody else in this division even has a winning record. You would think that if Nico's out there, it's because he's 100%. They wouldn't risk it. They wouldn't say it is a big game for them. But again, it's against an NFC team, right? Like, I know primetime, you want to put your best foot forward. But if he's out there, I got to believe he's ready to roll.
Yeah, and just in general, this is a game which just suits the wide receivers better. You go to the fantasy points allowed page we got on Fantasy Pros, and you can see that these teams, they rank 27th and 29th in points allowed to the running back position. But when you come to the wide receivers, the Lions allow the third most, the Texans allow the sixth most. Like, this is a game that should run through the air a little bit more than people might think.
We just talked a little bit about Bigsby. We got a question here with Brian Robinson officially out. He has to pick between Bucky or Bigsby. So Bucky Irving or Tank Bigsby, who do you like?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Bigsby there. I just think that Bucky seems to be dealing with, I think it's a toe injury that's kind of held him back a little over the last couple of weeks. And Rachaad White has kind of come out of nowhere and started looking like an efficient running back for the first time in his career, like averaging 5.4 yards per carry over the last 4 weeks, which just isn't something Rachaad White does. And you put that combined with the receiving production, and I feel slightly better about him.
How about this one? Jonnu Smith or Kyle Pitts?
So we're down so badly on Kyle Pitts. If you told somebody like a year ago, you'd be asking this. It's Kyle Pitts for me. I don't think anyone wants to play Kyle Pitts after last week. Like, when I saw Drake London go down, I think I had a pick'em slip that was looking very healthy, and I needed Kyle Pitts to get to 40 yards. He'd been over 60 yards in the previous 4 or 5 games, and he ends up with a 4% target share, 1 catch for 11 yards. The Saints, they aren't massively strong against tight end position, and I think that Kirk Cousins is going to come out here dealing, and I would expect Kyle Pitts to have a bounce back.
Yeah, he's off the injury report. And listen, I know it's a really bad game, and I know everybody is probably correctly like very excited to get off the Kyle Pitts train. Like, given what we've seen in previous years, it's very easy to say, oh no, he's turned back into a pumpkin or whatever. Remember the previous 4 weeks, 88 yards on 7 catches, 70 yards on 3 catches, 65 yards on 7 catches, and then 91 yards and 2 touchdowns just in week 8, not that long ago. So when your other option is Jonnu Smith, I'm going with Kyle Pitts. I want to ask about this one, Tajay Spears, who we talked about, or Jalen Coker. I'm curious really what you think about Coker, and this is a full PPR league for Scott.
Yeah, I mean, neither of these stats are particularly fun. Like, when you're scraping down to this level, it's going to be a bit of a dart throw. But I think I'd go with Jalen Coker. Like, the Panthers arrived in Germany yesterday. The Giants only got there today. I'm always a little bit wary about teams who turn up very close to the game. I remember when the Ravens turned up on the Friday before the game against Jacksonville Jaguars, which I was at, and got absolutely ruined.
My God. Why are you bringing that up, man?
Because last year, when they played the Titans, they turned up on the Monday and everything was peachy. So it's hard for me. It's hard for me to distance myself from that. But the Giants defense, they don't mind adding double coverage onto players who they feel they need to. If they go out and try to double cover Xavier Legette, maybe that just opens things up for Jalen Coker. But yeah, it's dart throw territory, and it's kind of difficult to have a real strong conviction on this one.
I think that Jacksonville loss was like 44-7, I want to say. And it was I think it
Ryan
was the most
Mallett.
thorough and complete shellacking in the Harbaugh era, is what I would say about that.
So my second daughter had been born 4 days before, and I pretty much begged my wife to let me still go to the game because it's a 3-hour drive from here. Got up, drove all the way to London, watched that entail, and then
Wow.
drove home, got stuck in traffic, and arrived home to the baby crying as I walked through the door. And yeah, there was some making up to be done after that.
That is brutal to have to go through all that and not even get even a competitive game, let alone a win. We got a question here from Awesome Dev. Full PPR, Amari Cooper or Tank Dell?
Yeah, I'm going Tank Dell here for the reasons I mentioned before about the Lions giving up a decent amount of wide receiver fantasy points, particularly if Nico Collins out there. That should help take away some coverage from Tank Dell.
Let's squeeze in one or two questions here before we get out of here. J.K. Dobbins or Rashad White?
That's J.K. Dobbins for me. Just feel better about his matchup and the amount of touches he'll get.
We like both these guys. Dell or McLaurin?
I'm going McLaurin.
Yeah, I agree there. How about Waddle or Leggett?
It's Waddle, but I don't feel particularly happy about it.
How about a bad one? Mike Williams or Quentin Johnston?
Oh man, I'm going Quentin Johnston just because he's been with the team properly. Like Mike Williams might play very limited amount of snaps this week. We saw it with Deontay Johnson when he got to the Ravens. We've seen that, Marshawn Lattimore isn't going to play for the Commanders this week. Teams who are trading for these players, they're not necessarily going to get him up to speed very quickly. Khalil Herbert, look how it worked out for him last night with the Bengals. I'd rather wait a week on Williams.
We will do two questions and then get out of here. So second to last question, the penultimate question, Jared Goff or Baker Mayfield?
That's Baker Mayfield for me.
And then the final question, actually, we have two super chats just came in, so we're going to answer both these and we'll get out of here, both from Safe and Sound. One of them, PPR, Downs or Mooney?
That's Downs. Really like the matchup. He's a top 15 wide receiver for me this week.
If London were to, there's some report come out, doesn't play or gets hurt, do you like Mooney if London's not in the picture?
If I need to go for a dart throw, I think that Downs is going to see more volume. Mooney is second in the league in 20 plus pass receiving plays. So yeah, if I need that ceiling.
All right. And the last question here, again from Safe and Sound, Najee Harris or Rashad White?
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's faded Najee over the years, I hate to say it, but it is Najee Harris.
Yeah, I in the same boat as you. I've happily faded him in the past, but he is the answer here. All right, we'll wrap up there. Tom, good talking to you. Good to finally do a show with you, buddy.
Yes.
We've interacted enough times, in the Slack and other spots like that. But good to actually do a show. Actually, I know we're gonna get out of here, but a super chat came in. I want to answer the super chats always. So this will be the last question. No matter what else comes in, Peter, Waddle and Leggett on waivers. Who is best rest of season?
It's got to be Waddle. Surely it's got to be Waddle.
Yeah, I would think. As bad as he's been, it's Waddle. All right, we will definitely wrap up there. Thank you, everybody, so much for the super chats, for all the questions. If your question didn't get answered, please hit us up on Twitter. Go to Discord, fantasypros.com/chat. We've got tons of AMAs there, channels from Fitz and Joe and Mayer and Welsh and Erickson and Debro and everybody, plus tons of other cool people you can engage with and have some fun and talk some fantasy football and start sit decisions. So go there again, fantasypros.com/chat. For Tom Strachan, I am Ryan Wormeli. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Best of luck in week 10, and we'll see you next time.